not traveled solo before, they've got some countries in mind. Is there any tips and tricks you might have?
I loved connecting with travel groups where it was about a group and not private. Getting into a place where you can do group tours is really good for meeting locals and meeting other people who are traveling just the same way that you are. I know when I went to Scotland for the first time, it was important to me that I was able to meet other people who were also, excited about. Those people ended up being folks I ended up going to the pubs and stuff with, even while I was, traveling around. So it almost creates immediate travel buddies. Senegal, I know because I spent too much time in Senegal. So I love cebu, which is their national fish dish, and I love poulet yassa, which is also a national dish. Senegal, you can get food from me any day. Morocco, it wasn't a certain dish, more so than it was about how fresh the produce was there. We just fell in love with it every day. And we don't even like vegetables like that. I'm telling on myself, I don't even like vegetables like that. But I ate them every day while I was in Morocco.
Welcome to the Winging It Travel podcast with me, James Hammond. Every Monday, I'll be joined by guests to talk about their travel stories, travel tips, backpacking advice, and so much more. Are you a backpacker, gap year student, or simply someone who loves to travel? Then this is the podcast for you, designed to inspire you to travel. There'll be stories to tell, tips to share, and experiences to inspire. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode, where I'm joined by Rikimah Glymph, who has travelled to 120 countries solo and 72 countries with her son. Rikimah is a franchise owner of Cruise Planners, which helps plans people's itineraries for fun and for her wellness clients. Rikimah is also the founder of Be Well 365, which helps people prioritize their wellness. Today, I want to talk about Rikimah's travels, her businesses, how she sees travel today, and what it's like to travel with her son to so many countries. Rikimah, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get into this conversation.
Yeah, let's do it. Where are you right now in the world?
So I am, unfortunately, I'm in Maryland on the East Coast of the United States. I said unfortunately because we're getting some cold weather. And so I keep daydreaming about warmth and sun. And actually, I was making a joke with my dad this morning saying, I feel like a flight risk right now. It feels like it's time to go again.
Yeah, I love that, flight risk. Yeah. I feel like that all the time now.
That's right. Well, if you come to our house, we have a major world map that's on the wall. And it both identifies countries we've been to, countries we want to go to, but it means that we're constantly looking at this map saying, we're next. So sometimes we're feeling very Carmen Sandiego-like.
Okay, we'll come to where next later in the episode. Actually, I've got some questions about what your plans are, because you've been to so many countries, right? I'm going to start with a bit of a backstory, actually. I want to know, where did you grow up? And also, was travel in your life from an early age?
That's right. So I originally hail from Los Angeles, California. So on the West Coast of the United States. And when I was younger, no, I didn't actually get a chance to travel at all. I didn't start traveling until my sophomore year of college.
Wow.
And my first trip was to South Africa. And then it went after that. That's all she wrote. So no, didn't grow up traveling, but I did grow up and my dad talked a lot about how he traveled when he was in college and how it opened up and expanded his mind. And so even though he didn't take me to travel, I remember him saying very vividly, make sure that when you get old enough, you daydream about places that you wish you knew about, that you don't know anything about, and then go see those places.
Were the daydreams more US travel based, or were you thinking like far away in terms of internationally?
I was always thinking about a flight, definitely outside of the United States. So I'm under traveled when it comes to the United States. I think I've been probably 15 states max.
Oh, wow. I've been to more.
Yeah.
That's saying something. I haven't been that much. Yeah. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So Maryland is new, obviously, because you're not from there. Why did you live there and when did you move there?
Yeah. So I moved to Maryland right after I graduated undergrad. So many years ago at this point. But I chose Maryland originally because when I came to the East Coast, I thought I wanted to be a diplomat. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get involved. I'm going to. And then as it turns out, I skipped the diplomatic experience because what I realized is I wanted to travel. I realized I loved infrastructure work. And so for people who don't know what that is, That's the people who are on the back end who do things like finance, human resources,
Mm.
operations, compliance. So I knew I wanted to do that because when I was going to go the diplomatic route, it was to do the management track, which is exactly that. Uh, and so I said, how can I marry like my love of travel and the work that I love doing? How can I marry it together? And actually, I went to go work for an organization that had a global footprint,
Okay.
which is what began, I think, the career part of how I ended up in sort of HR and wellness and all of these pieces. But certainly came here with purpose and then rediscovered or discovered rather that actually what I wanted to do had many faces and that I could choose many different vehicles to do it.
Hmm. And Maryland is a very different place to California, right?
Uh, yeah, that's right. That's right. California, Southern California is sunny all the time, right?
Yeah.
I think that's why we smile a lot
Yeah.
in California because we've got the good vitamin D. We're out on the beaches. We're drinking our wheatgrass. But you're not doing a lot of talking about politics. You
Ain't got
got to
time for
come to
that.
the East Coast, and that's right. And people are a little bit more serious, a little bit more buttoned up. I would almost say that the personality profile feels a little bit more anal retentive, definitely more plugged into the global experience. And so that felt very different. The weather is different. We get 4 seasons here.
Mm.
I actually was just saying the other day, I think we get 2 major seasons, and the other two are just blips in judgment by Mother Nature. Because we get the longest winter, the longest summer, and then we get like a hot skip minute for spring and for fall.
Got it.
Just enough to, take the chip off, but not enough for us to enjoy it the way I would have in California.
But California, though, I mean, you can see why people move there, right? When I think of California, we drove to 101 last summer. I'm like, just imagine living in these like little beach towns, a bit like the OC back in the early 2000s when you watch it, right? But it's like, oh,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
great
No,
weather, chill
that's
vibe,
right.
some big cities,
That's right. And
beach.
that's Southern California, right? Because the
Mm,
inland is hot.
it's hot. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
windy and not beachy, right? So Southern California, the on the coast is what I'd be talking about. I actually didn't even go back there. I had an opportunity to go back to California. And when I went back, it was a culture shock again because
Oh,
I realized that actually coming to the East Coast, I found my tribe. I found my people, right?
oh,
Folks who are
interesting.
a little bit more serious about what's going on in a much more political way and workaholics. There tends to be tons of workaholics on this side of town. So some of the personality profile things that surface with some of the humans on this side of town, I identified with a lot more than what I was coming from, which is relaxing, being centered, chilling on the beach,
Yeah.
drinking grass, all the things. So,
I find it interesting because I've interviewed quite a few Americans on the podcast who, let's say, East and West is quite an interesting debate, right? A lot of
yeah,
people from the East go West and don't go back. And then
that's
you're just
right.
proving it's vice versa. People go from the West, go to East. Can't really work that one out.
That's right. That's right. And I really think it has to do with sort of people's core, right? Like
Mm,
at my core, I'm a workaholic. At my core, I tend to want to be plugged into the world
yeah.
and social justice and wanting to support, people who are struggling. And like that tends to be my lean. And so what I find is that when you're born over here, it can be overwhelming because it's all you know.
Yeah.
If I'm born on the West Coast, I don't know anything about any of this. And actually, it's quite exhilarating once you find it, because then you say, okay, there's more to life than just this other stuff. So I think that I had a reverse experience than what a lot of people that I met on this side of town did, which is they couldn't wait to get out of here. They're like, look, I just, I'm tired of seasons. I don't want to be so serious all the time. I'm tired of seeing presidential cars. So for
Yeah.
them, just like, I just want polar opposite of what's happening here. And for me, I was like, I'm seeking more seriousness, people who want to talk about it all the time. So, I mean, in my older age now, because I do so much wellness work, I have a different appreciation for what California brought, though,
Yeah.
and what it gave me, because I didn't identify early on in my life that like chilling at the beach, drinking my wheat shots, working out all the time, that was a part of wellness that like I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
realize. I think I took it for granted that we had the kind of weather that allowed us to be thinking wellness all the time. And now on the East Coast, we're all packing on pounds for the winter. And like, so it's a very different vibe. And I think it impacts your wellness in very different ways. So
Yeah, I hear you. I'm from the Northern Hemisphere. So UK has the 4 seasons, right? I think we always probably, if you spoke to the generic UK person about lifestyle, they're like, oh, where's that? People probably say Australia because it's got like good weather. good wages, much more chilled, not as serious, quite far away from anywhere. So I
That's
definitely
right.
feel you in terms of that. So what do you make of the middle part of America then? What's that?
That I don't know. I have a feeling those guys are not as plugged in, right? Like I think that they might be more plugged in than the West Coast.
Yeah,
I don't feel like the West is plugged in. I mean, there was so much about the world that I just didn't know
yeah, yeah,
about. It was like we were in our own little bubble on the West.
yeah.
And then I go to the center of America, and it seems like they know some, but not enough to make
Mm,
choices on any of the things, really. That's my own personal opinion.
yeah, yeah.
Then you go to the East where it's just extreme. It feels like an extreme pendulum swing
Mm.
from like not knowing enough to like thinking they know everything,
You can't
So,
win. Oh,
so the good thing is, I feel like, if you've traveled through all the different places, you might find your ability to be at peace in any of these different zones,
sure.
right? And I
Yeah.
think it does. I think it does depend on what you care about in the moments.
Yeah, and I think here in Vancouver, I think we're the same as what you said about not being plugged in because we're so far away from anywhere. At least in USA, you got that middle bit is a bit bland, but you have got something going on. But from Ontario, which is obviously where all the government and stuff is, to us, that's a
Yeah.
heck of a journey. That's a 4 or 5 hour flight, and it does feel like we're kind of just over here on the west, just kind of chilling out in our own little vibe, I suppose. But like California, maybe it's a West Coast
Well,
thing.
we felt the difference too when we went to Toronto and then when we went to Vancouver, because I took my son up to BC to do some puddle hoppers. He
Oh
got on
yeah,
some of the planes, went to Victoria, all the
yeah,
things. But when we originally started going to Canada, we were in Toronto, we were in the Ontario area.
mm,
And it was hustle bustle. It was hustle bustle, right? Like it
yeah,
felt like you heard people talking, you saw all of these different nationalities. Everything reminded you about the global experience as far as I was concerned.
mm,
Then I went to Vancouver and it was like overcasty and kind of spritzy. That's why I said it reminds me of Ireland earlier, right? Like, and to get anywhere, you're on small plane or,
yeah.
it felt very different. And then when we went into like Victoria and some of these other places, the pace was even slower.
Yeah, Vancouver Island, way slow.
So yeah, we were like, is there one restaurant here? Are they?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that was given middle America to me. Was the
Ah,
fact that there wasn't a lot, in California on the West Coast, you can find lots of things. Seattle, Washington, Oregon. There's lots of food. There's lots of hustle, but it's a different kind of hustle bustle. It's a outdoorsy sort of,
mm,
let's go hiking. Let's go to the beach. Let's Vancouver. It didn't feel hikey, beachy, any of that, but it certainly felt like almost mom and pop like for me.
okay. Very interesting.
So yeah.
I think the island, just to touch on the Vancouver Island, it does feel like you are okay. So I've said Vancouver feels quite far away, and it does. But Vancouver Island, you are literally like on the edge of the earth. But there's nothing going on there. Like you can really just bunker down, not worry about anything. Right? It's a magical place. It's quite unique.
That's right. That's right. I
Yeah.
was telling someone that I was traveling with. I said if I took Vancouver and I took a place called Placentia, Belize, which is like at the tip of Belize and the out in the boon, you got to take a puddle jumper to get to it. Also,
Yeah.
uh, I remember making the same comment in both places. People who want to get away from people should come to places like this.
Yeah.
People who don't want to see a lot of faces, a lot of happening, a lot of buzz, who just want to get a good book and a glass of wine and just kind of do their thing.
Mm,
These places, in very different ways, represent that. Vancouver is not as sunny as Placentia, Belize, right? So
true.
Belize is the place you're going to get all that sun and heat and all that stuff. But they have some of the same kind of undertones to the way that the energy in the countries operate. Or in the, for Canada, Vancouver, the way it operates in comparison to Placentia. So, anyways, it just isn't. It's just something I've acknowledged.
But it's weird because I think the vitamin D thing, it really is a thing.
Yeah.
I know we like probably joke about it, and I guess you probably need to find if you're into that as much as you think. I personally think I always hark on about Australia, and I don't know it's because I had a good time there, or it's just because the weather is just always decent, so nothing can really stop much going on that you have planned, right? But here, you literally from November to February, you're in because there's just rain day after
Yeah.
day. It must play on people's minds and affects them mentally.
I think so because we were meant to be outside. We're meant to,
Yeah,
touch things and And also the vitamin D thing is real. I mean, when I'm here too long, I can tell when I'm here too long. My skin starts going all pale on me. Then I start, taking vitamin D tablets. And then I'm reaching for Barbados and some of these, the Dominican Republic. And I'm like, look, I'm not in the mood to fly 10 hours to get anywhere else. But if it's within 5 hours, let me do it. So we have circled the entire islands at this point because the winter is so long. It's going to start in December, but you felt it October, November. It started getting too cold to be comfortable. And then you're still going into it. So what are we in April right now? And we woke up to like 40-degree weather here.
Yeah, rain. Yeah.
Right. And so it's just like, no, this is why you could get 5 or 6 trips out of somebody.
Yeah. And how do Californians see like the winter in terms of going into like,
you got to breeze. California, you got to breeze.
Right.
You got to breeze, literally. Like we had windbreakers. If you could ever, think about what that is, a windbreaker, a type of jacket that literally the only purpose is to block the wind because there's no insulation.
Yeah.
It's just a windbreaker. So you got a little bit of rain, but remember they have that song, "It Never Rains in Southern California." So a little rain and a whole lot of wind. That's it.
Okay. Let's get stuck in some travel. What was your first international trip? Is it South Africa? Yeah.
That's right.
And why did you go there and how did you find the experience?
Yeah, I mean, I chose South Africa because, my entire existence, my dad had always said, as a Black American, you need to go back to the continent. So when I became, old enough to go, I remember what he said, which is like, let that be your first trip so that you can wash away all the stereotypes and stuff and you can go see it for yourself. And then it just so happens that when I was in college, I went to UCLA, and UCLA had a study abroad program. And so they did study abroad programs in, Africa, West Africa, and South Africa all the time. And that made it a very easy experience because I didn't have to plan anything. I just had to show up and go.
Yeah.
And so that was my first trip.
Was there any culture shock for you?
Culture shock. Well, I think the biggest shock was how long it took to get there. I mean, 30 hours later, several drinks later, right? And I'm still in the air. I mean, I was confused about what day it was. I had no idea, like no concept of time because it was so long to get to the southern tip of Africa. And in retrospect, what I realized also is that's not the kind of trip you need to be taking in economy if you're a person who's an experiential kind of traveler.
Yeah.
For me, the experience matters just as much as the hotel room, just as much as the trip getting there. Yeah. If I'm on a 30-hour flight, but I'm sitting in economy with someone else laying in my lap, scrunched up, fighting for elbow space, that's going to be the longest 30 hours of my life. That may have been why I thought I was on that plane for several days even. And no amount of drinking was going to take that away. I think someone asked me, how'd you tolerate it? And I was like, I think I had way more drinks than I've ever had my entire life, just trying to stay asleep the whole time. But fast forward to the future, state of the world, going back to South Africa again, because I went several times after that point, as I was, aging in my career and stuff. What I realized is South Africa is a first class experience. I'm going first class. I'm not doing economy ever.
Yeah.
Again, for those 3 hours.
Yeah.
And, it made a difference to anticipate food. It made a difference to learn about making sure I've got the right snacks on board and that I've downloaded my videos. When I started off, no one talked to me about those things.
It's important.
So I'm going to get on a plane and expect that all the videos that they have already, preloaded is going to last me, not for 30 hours, is not. So
30 hours, yeah.
Yeah. So there was a lot I had to learn over the years that then by the time I did the trip the second time out, it was much better.
So your trip there was more of a sort of staying there like medium term as a sort of a study environment.
Yeah. So I was there for 6 weeks. The first time I ever went.
Yeah, that's quite a long time to go first time abroad internationally on a trip. So I think my next question would be, I know that was the first trip, but what was the first like leisurely trip, not related to career or school, but like one you chose to go to just to go and check it out? Yeah,
that's right. So I feel like the first trip that I took that was leisurely was when I went to France. I did London and France.
Oh yeah.
Because they were close enough. And actually, it was the first time I had hopped on the train also, which was magical. But I loved that trip because it was one that I chose It wasn't too far away. And it was so easy to get around. When I got into Africa, it wasn't as easy to get around because you didn't have the same type of transportation infrastructure
Mm.
throughout both Africa, but also just like the countries and stuff. But the quite the contrary is that when I got into Europe, I was able to hail taxis. I was able to get on the trains. I was able to even walk some of
Mm.
the cities, right? And
Yeah.
that felt completely different than what I had first experienced. So
Oh, wow. Okay. And what type of traveler do you think you are right now then? Are you a budget? Are you a backpacker? Are you mid-range, luxury? Or has it changed over the years?
it has because I originally used to stay in hostels.
Hmm.
I loved meeting random Polish dudes in hostels. I loved like that was my jam. I was here for it. That quickly shifted over the years. I think age probably played a role. I'm not sure. Now I would consider myself more of a middle to luxury traveler.
Hmm.
I did make that comment earlier, which is I won't do flights over 10 hours without it being first class. I'm not going to do it.
Fair.
Um, but it's true also that I have taken 4 and 5 hour flights and did the same thing, business class.
Right.
So I do think that the kind of travel has shifted. I went from doing hostels to doing Marriott to doing Four Seasons. And so you see the progression.
Yeah, that's a big change.
Yeah, and like I said, what I realized is I didn't realize early on, but the more I reflected on my experiences, the more I realized my hotel room matters as much as this plane flight. So how I get there and the way that I set myself up in terms of, the comfort level, it
Mm.
actually impacts how much I enjoy the countries or not. So when I first went to London, for example, I was in a hostel, and I didn't enjoy it because I also wasn't used to sharing shower amenities, like, right? Like I had to
Yeah.
wear sandals to go into those
Yeah.
showers.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I could get a room without a roommate. And I ended up bunking with a stranger for the first time in my life that experience. So that was that. But then when I went, for example, the next time around when I went to Italy, I chose a hotel. And for a long time I was hovering between 3 and 4 star hotels.
Mm.
I think in the last 10 years it's been more like 4 and 5 star. But again, that has a lot to do with age and sort of what now I know about preferences. And also now that I'm traveling with my kid and that I've been traveling with my kid, he just has certain things going on too. Like he's got allergies to certain things. I
Yeah.
need to in locations and in amenities where they're not going to think twice about an accommodation for his food. Right. Like I want you to be excited that I need you to take that pepper out of his food. And sometimes when you travel at the 3 stars and the 2 stars, for example, they got set menus. They're not doing
Yeah.
nothing besides that bulk meal that they created. And so some of those types of things I think pushed me over the edge in terms of the kinds of amenities that I was willing to stay in and otherwise.
I do want to touch on, do you think because you changed your travel style with the rooms and the type of place you're staying at, you like appreciate like, I don't know, sleep more maybe? And because I feel like for me, I've done the hostel thing. I don't mind staying in hostels, but staying in a 6 bed dorm, can I do it now? I think I just about do it because I've got good
Yeah.
earplugs. But I do
Yeah.
appreciate a good night's sleep because otherwise the day after is ruined, right? You just don't
That's
feel that up to it to go and check out and explore.
That's right. I definitely value rest. And
Okay.
and this is because when I'm in countries, I love to go explore.
Yeah.
I want to go in the back, alleys. I'm trying to go under the church. I want to go sit in the earth. You know what I mean? Like I want to go all out, which means that I'm oftentimes exhausted by the time I come back. So I do want a really good deep bath. I
Mm.
do want a bed that like is comfortable. And like I said, over time, I've realized even pillows matter.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to
Huge.
smell feathers in my pillow, right? Like, so, and that's certain hotels that even give you an option to say, I don't want to smell someone's sweat. I don't want to smell feathers. Like, I need a fresh pillow.
Pillows underrated. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird how you get older and you sort of appreciate the little things. Like people
That's
who
right.
are like 2021 like a pillow. Like, what does that matter? But actually, when you get to 30, 35, it does matter. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of my own experiences. Like, because I'm planning my trip in November, I'm like, oh, do I? It will be hostels because I do like the hostel vibe, and
Thanks.
I'm still in my 30s. I feel like I need to appreciate that before I really cancel them off in later in life. But can I do a dorm, or is it going to be a private room? It probably will be a private room because I just need that
Yeah.
potential to chill out without anyone around. Whereas like when I was younger, I don't know if you're the same. You're probably like some days not do anything. You just want to see if there's anyone around to talk to or hang around in the hostel bar or the hostel common room, right? And not put too much
Yeah.
importance on just seeing the actual town you're in or the village or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, especially if you're there for over 5 days, for example.
Mm.
Like most times we come in with a list of, things that probably covers the first 3 days. But after that, and the exhaustion of sort of even being out on foot or, out and about, you're right. You start to look for community. You start to look
Mm.
for those longer relationships that you hope will turn into your travel buddies next time, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. And I think you put a more appreciation on maybe like the night activities as well when you're younger.
yeah,
Whereas now it's definitely
yeah.
more about day activities with the odd night, right? But it comes into when you're later in life, can you be hungover and tired from walking all day? For the next
That's
day,
right.
can you do that? It's a big
It's
question.
true because I mean, I'm thinking about the college traveling that I was doing for fun. Like I remember going to Ireland and I remember being like, I am staying in the city in the middle of Dublin
Yeah,
because
yeah.
what I know is I love Guinness and I know I'm trying to go out to dance. And that was a very different vibe than like, for example, when I went to Cartagena, Colombia, and
Mm.
I was like, oh no, I'm just trying to eat. I want to see Baru, I want to see the islands. I'm trying to get on a boat but definitely not like I'm trying to hang out late. I'm gonna be,
Mm.
drinking crazy because it's hot because security things are different, right? Like
Yeah.
because what I went there for was a different purpose also. But I do remember going into Ireland. I do remember going into Spain and picking hotels based on how close is it to, the hangout spots, how close is it to the pubs. So I definitely recall that.
And now though, because you book maybe mid to luxury range hotels, they tend to be in the center, right? But I guess hostels, there's a risk if you book in a cheap hostel, it's a mile out of town.
Well, and also like, right, the location comes with a premium. So
Yeah.
what we know is that the more city center, the more expensive,
Mm.
right? And so hostels will be on the outskirts, for example, not directly city center. Some of the more luxury hotels are not exactly city center either, because some of them to get into the city center, I still got to take a taxi or a private car,
Yeah.
10, 15 minutes in to get there. And some of that has to do with some of these luxury places want to have sprawling yards,
Mm.
right? They want to have massive, resort like experiences. And so that means more land that they
Yeah.
might be after. I don't stay in hotels that are upright in terms of they don't have outdoor spacing or, even a proper pool. I know we went to Miami, and one of the things that really bothered me was we stayed at a Four Seasons that had a pool on the rooftop. Same thing came up for us in Spain, and we were like, "That's not what we were after." Why? Because a rooftop pool sounds like a party. That sounds like a bar is going to be up there. That feels like
Yeah.
adult land, not necessarily land for kid and child. For mom and
Sure.
kid. And as it turns out, it was also small pools,
Yeah. Yeah.
which meant that really wasn't given family. It was given young, sexy singles like mingle vibe, right? So we also have realized over the years that if we see these rooftop pools more often than not, maybe that's not where we're going because the
Mm.
kid oftentimes is not really invited up there.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Yeah. Any pool, even for a hostel, this is any pool on top, on the rooftop, I don't
Yeah.
trust it. No. Because you don't know what room you're going to get, right? So if
Oh,
your room is on the first floor, like down the bottom or basement, you might be all right, but you don't know, do you? You might get there, it's like, oh, it's the fourth floor, which is the floor beneath the bar at the top. Oh no, that's gonna be music
that's
till
right.
2. I'm not gonna sleep
That's
that
right.
well. Yeah.
You're getting no rest.
What is your travel philosophy right now? A bit of a wide range question. That like, why do you travel now? What things when you go away are
Yeah.
important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I travel now for wellness. I oftentimes say travel is wellness.
Mm.
Traveling is environmental wellness. So when we travel now, we are traveling because we are looking for sun. We travel now, we are looking to decompress.
Hmm.
We do a lot of other kinds of work outside of the travel and the wellness work. And so sometimes it's just to unplug and to say, you know what? When we are stateside, when we are where we call home, the natural inclination is to be on the go. The kid
Yeah.
has his swim schedule. He has his school schedule. Mom has work. Grandpa has this, right? So like there's this long list of to-dos that when we can unplug and go somewhere else, it's literally about sticking your head in the sand and just taking a deep breath. So for us, that's a lot of what we've been doing. We also still host wellness retreats all over the world. So sometimes, for example, at the end of the year, we'll be in Phuket, Thailand, because we're actually taking a group of people to Thailand, for example. So sometimes it's about our work in terms of like retreats and taking families on cruises, that sort of thing. Sometimes, maybe even I would argue the majority of the time, it's about our own wellness and centering and making sure we're okay also.
Okay. And do you ever get time to maybe go away to like explore? Or do you think that's not those days are over, but do you ever go to maybe, I don't know, I say a week like in Guatemala, you're going to hike some volcanoes now? Do you ever do that sort of stuff? Or is
Oh,
that,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, part of the reason why people come to us to book their travel is because they always see that we have itineraries that look like that.
Okay, great.
Like when we
Yeah.
went to Morocco, my son was ziplining through the Atlas Mountain.
Love it.
People thought we were nuts. They were like, why is he ziplining and why through those mountains? I said, well, because he's also homeschooled, which means that he's got to learn about the mountains and the geography of Morocco. So we always travel by sea, by land, by air.
Yeah.
There's always some version of a puddle hopper or a helicopter. There's always some version of a boat, whether it's a catamaran or a jet boat or something of the sort. And then there's also some element of just land travel. Are we going into to countryside? Like I love going into the countryside. When we were just in Belize, I'm over here scaling the side of mountains with horses. I got my 75-year-old dad on a horse scaling the side of a mountain. We were just in the Dominican Republic, because remember, it's the winter time, which means that I filled up the entire winter. So we were in the Dominican Republic, and I'm like, I need to get in the bush. I need one of those eco bikes or eco little motor things. And I'm trying to go in here to see what folks are doing and how they're really living. So when people see us posting things like that, I mean, you will see pictures even where we're taking a picture of our feet full of sand as we are laid out on some kind of chair, watching the ocean waves even. So it goes from super chill to like we're paragliding, Aruba was a paragliding, haven over there for us. And people see that and they say, build us an itinerary, build us something. You go do the research and let us know. These days when we travel, my son is also into parkour. So we find parkour gyms all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we love Canada, for example, because you guys have tons of amazing parkour going on up there. The same way as, you'll find in Europe, because it came out of France, right? So you're going to find it in London and Spain and France. And so we definitely build out itineraries that span the gamut. And if it's just my son and I, it's go, go, go. We are tearing up everything. If my dad is included, you're going to see some more relaxing beach experiences. More, we're not probably going to be on horses again because he came back and his knee was hurt for months. But you might see us on a catamaran instead of a speedboat, for example. So
that's great. It kind of leads to my next question. Do you have like any non-negotiables when you travel in terms of activities? So do you know if you went on a high activity trip and a chill trip the week after, is there some activities that you'll do on both? So for an example, mine would be I'd always go to an independent cafe to taste the coffee in a local area, like anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, we are foodies to the core.
Okay. Yeah,
we are always going to try local cuisine, full stop. And if I end up finding out that I'm eating too much international, I start getting upset and antsy, and I start wanting to hail a taxi to go into the center of the country. My son is also a foodie, and so he loves to find restaurants to critique the foods and stuff. And when we find sushi places, specifically when we're in Asia, he loves to get the omakase. It's called an omakase.
Okay.
Which is basically the chef is going to decide for you. You're going to eat everything he puts in front of you. That's what you're doing.
Oh, wow.
Because he loves to explore, but he loves to have people just put things in front of him and say, this should be great. Eat it. So food is definitely a non-negotiable. It is always the thing. We're always looking for local food. The other thing is that we are always looking to localize generally. So we're looking for your markets. We are going to look for patronizing locally. Like, we're not the kinds of folks who travel and stay on the resorts, stay in the hotel experiences or the touristy areas. We are always looking to get out into the local environments to, buy from those guys, because we understand I think there's a social responsibility that we hold which is if you're going to be in someone's country, you need to pour money into the hands of locals, not into big business. So that's our politic, which means that we do try to share when we're in countries.
Oh, leads nicely to my next question about sustainability. Surely a part of that has to be investing in local, like you said, markets, cuisines, restaurants, coffee places, because that has to be key, because you don't want to go to the chains, I guess, and give money to international businesses. You need to give to local ones, right?
That's right. And also, we tip heavier when we're overseas. Here is a 20%. I might give a 50% tip there. Why? Because when you realize what they're making on an hourly basis, it's little to nothing. And so for me, it's been important for me to demonstrate to my son and to explain to him that when you have a little bit, you need to share. There is no point in us hoarding and being greedy. We're not dying with any of this. And also, I think it helps to make you feel better about your life because you realize that it's not just about you. We are all a part of the same experience. And that means that that's my brother and that's my sister. And, and if one kid is not eating, then he's invited to the table too. So I have been notorious for buying food for random kids who are hanging out. Even when people are like, don't buy for them, don't give to them. I'm like, no, actually, that's an individual decision. And I am going to buy today. And, we are going to tip. So my dad used to laugh and he used to be like, you walking around acting like Oprah. I don't know what that's supposed to mean to him. But I'm telling him, that when people see us coming, I want them to be excited to see us because they know that we understand the local environment. And so understanding that means we're not looking for a break, right? Like you already get paid $3 an hour. So why am I sitting up here fussing at you about not being as excited to see me if I already understand that that there's a 50-50 shot that I may not tip and you may not eat tonight, or your kids are still going to go without while our entitled children are around here bossing you as an adult around because you're the server, right? Like, so there are those types of things that we are very, very keen on, and we try to lead by example and be, I think, ambassadors for what it could look like to care about other people.
Okay. And you mentioned your son there as well. Let's go to traveling with your son. 72 countries. That's a heck of a number with your son. How old is he now? And when did you start traveling with him?
Yeah, he's 12 years old. He'll be 13 in July. And I started traveling with him when he was 6 months old.
Wow. And can I ask why?
Because I didn't want to be away from him. I said, you could be a mom and still travel. And travel was my first love. And when I became a mom, I had to ask myself, what are the top things that I'm not giving up? Traveling was one and riding horses was the other. So that and go-karts. So my son loves all three because I integrated him into all of that very early on. So he's a race head, he loves horses, and he always and forever loves to travel.
But what an amazing experience for him. I mean, how rare is it that you get a kid who grows up in the first 12 years who has seen so many different cultures? And because they're so young at that point, they're going to soak everything in, and any prejudices or any unsavory thoughts are not going to be there because he would have seen a full array of different types of people and cultures, right?
That's right. I mean, he can relate to anybody, literally. He has run into children that don't even speak English, and they find some nonverbal way to communicate with each other forever and always, right? One of his biggest issues that he runs into because of it is that he runs into folks who've never left their cities. They've never left their communities, and they struggle with him because of the way he talks, because of the surety around, his comfort level of engaging. Even people who may not be as comfortable with him, for example, right? We live in a complicated experience. And so, oftentimes folks are like, he needs to know that he's a child. And it's like, actually, he is a child, but he's so used to relating to people who are not hung up on these other things. Right. Yeah. And like this power dynamic and all of these things, like he's used to working with people who like that never comes up because they can barely communicate anyway. It's just on a very basic level. They just want to have a good time together, And so it's not laden with bias. It's not laden with all these ill intentions or ill thoughts. It is literally at its core a very, very innocent experience. And when you see it, you say, that's humanity. That's what it's supposed to look like, is people being able to bump into each other and have a good time without all these other things, right? That really shouldn't take precedence. So he can work with anybody. He can relate to anybody. He's unbothered by the fact that you have an accent or that you cannot speak English. He is someone, he hangs out with people and they're always trying to learn other people's language. You
Yeah, yeah.
know, the other day he's trying to learn German. Meanwhile, he's been in Spanish his whole life, and he's had all kinds of African dialects thrown his way, and
Yeah.
fly over here, and so he's also desensitized to to hearing the many accents of languages and all this stuff. He actually that's actually more of a welcomed experience than not.
Mm.
So like we live in a country where they struggle with immigration, and he's like, why? This is how we learn. This is how we become better. Like this is why I'm able to even talk about all these things because of all these cultures, all these people that I've bumped into. So he's just a really unique person, and I think it makes him interesting to be around. I think it makes it a struggle though for traditional children because they
Yes.
know where he's coming from. So he ends up around kids who are traveling as much, or kids who may have been born overseas, or something like that. I think the international zone is where he tends to hover now that he's been so many places so early.
Is he in like a traditional school now?
So he was schooled for the first, let's see, for the first 4.5, 5 years,
Mm.
speeding up to now. So he goes to an IB program, an IB school.
What's that?
It's an international baccalaureate experience.
Okay.
So it's based on the international experience.
Right. So he is amongst his people there, which is good. Because I was going to ask, like, if he's in a like a normal traditional school, that must be
Yeah.
quite difficult because
He tried that, and it was tough.
yeah,
It was tough. The teachers weren't used to kids who know as much. Like he's a big history buff. He goes
yeah,
down.
yeah. Geography as well, I imagine.
Oh yeah, right. And so it creates a thing where he's got to step back,
Mm.
let other children have the floor, try really hard to stretch his own emotional intelligence around his irritation that he can't just blurt it all out. Uh, and so that didn't really work because it didn't allow for him to keep flourishing on his own, especially coming from homeschool where he was used to learning at his own pace and just kind of
Sure.
rapid fire learning from everything, right?
Yeah.
And then going to an environment where it was conditioned. And so the IB program works a little bit better for that.
And that's a good discussion of the homeschool versus traditional, right? Because
Yeah.
homeschooling, like you say, own pace, own interests. We go into traditional school, you're going to probably be hearing from a lot of teachers who don't know too much. They're reading from a
That's
book, and it's very standardized.
yeah.
So there's no wiggle room to maybe choose that path or that path. It's quite structured and rigid in that way, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And if you're used to homeschool, you're used to also having more agency and autonomy over even the way you process information
Of course, yeah,
or your takeaways, right?
yeah.
Your key takeaways. And so in this environment, it's a little bit different in that they are used to the kids who are coming with this international lean, so it's not
Mm.
as off-putting. So it doesn't have to feel like a Cleon, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah,
Meanwhile, he hangs out with all kids, and he shares all the information whenever they're open to it and want to hear it. But it doesn't mean that they, have to be uncomfortable or feel any kind of negative way because maybe they don't know, or maybe
yeah,
they
yeah.
don't have as much background. So it's an interesting balancing dance that we're having to do because of it.
And does he recall any favorite countries from his past? I mean, how many 12-year-olds have traveled to 72 countries? Does he recall any activities or any people you've met like quite fondly or regularly?
Yeah. I mean, originally he loved South Africa because he said it reminded him of California.
Yeah.
Then that quickly went away, and then he fell in love with Morocco.
Mm.
Um, Loved Moroccan food. I mean, the food is so fresh.
Oh,
It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. That was also the first time he had ever had a Moroccan bath, and I'm convinced he may have been in love with the woman who gave it to him. I'm not sure. Uh, and then most recently, we all agreed that the Dominican Republic was just amazing.
mm. Wow.
So,
Okay. I was going to ask you also for yourself, three countries that you've traveled to that really hit a spot with you as well. Any that come straight away to your mind?
yeah. I just rated this. I just put it online too. So the
Ah,
Dominican Republic has hit number one for me. I
okay.
used to live in Barbados, and so a lot of
Yeah.
people was like, "Wait, what? Barbados was knocked out of first place?" Because Dominican Republic has everything Barbados had and has delicious food. Barbados is great, but their food is bland. It's not a foodie's paradise. That's not what you're getting there.
Okay.
Uh, and so Barbados became second. And then what did I say third? Third is Senegal still. West
Oh, wow.
Africa is
West
my
Africa.
favorite place in the whole world. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Any reason for Senegal?
The people. I mean, they practice something called taranga, which is like what's mine is yours. Like these guys are literally the most generous, kindest groups of people that I've run into. And there you've got, everybody's religion is living amongst themselves without any tension. And so it's just a sense of peace and just kind of calm. And I like how simple it is, quite frankly. I mean, my son hates it because he's like, all this dust, they deliver a mail by horse. This is too old school for me. Meanwhile, for me, I'm like, right, but it reminds you of how simple life could be if we weren't so fixated on always having the latest, the greatest, the newest, because we live in a country where people are miserable and they have everything, right? And then you go to countries where they've got almost nothing and you say they are so much happier.
That's the biggest question there, isn't it? Like when you go to Asia or Africa, for example, I don't know if it's fair to say this, but like people with not much or as much as you, why are they so much happier than our society who have perceivably got everything? So you have to ask the question, what system we're living in that's enabling that?
That's right. That's right. Well, because we live in a world where it says get bigger and better.
Yeah.
You need this thing. You need this thing. And if something is constantly telling you that you need a thing all the time, and you may not be able to get the thing all the time, or you can't reconcile it in your mind. Well, wait, I just got a thing. Why I need this thing? But all you hear is you need, and you don't have what they said you needed. Now, all of a sudden, people are walking around feeling like there's a deficit. I think we spend too much time on material and not enough time on experiences.
Absolutely.
And when you go into developing nations, those guys are spending more time with family. Those guys are in this, out in the nature more. They are not working as stressful as I think some of these other environments that are like cogs in a wheel style, right? Our country, I can say, we don't have the best labor laws. We don't have the best laws that protects people and how much time they're working. We force people to make decisions about whether or not if the job is more important than the family. And so when you think about things like that, you say, and there's always a store that's selling something for everybody, right? And so it's like one of the things that really drew me to Barbados and why I stayed for so long was there wasn't anything to buy.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to decompress my own toxicity.
That's quite difficult, right?
Yeah, because I was so conditioned to want to buy.
Yeah.
And you go to Barbados and it's like, you can't even get chicken unless you go to the store on a Wednesday.
I love that.
The other day, you know what I mean? And during Christmas, I was desperate to find a Christmas tree. You could never have seen someone so conditioned to go out and buy trees and ornaments and gifts during the holiday season. Barbados, I had this small Charlie Brown tree that it was giving nothing Christmas. The bulbs all had Caribbean vibes, so nothing cold. Like it's not giving Christmas. And we walked into the children's toy store and my son identified that he had everything in there already. At some point in time in his life, he had already had all of it.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing to buy. And so what happened? He stopped asking.
Just a couple of things from me. Please head to my new website, www.wingingittravelpodcast.com. The link is in the show notes. And secondly, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I'm really enjoying showing you my content I have from the last year or so. Thank you. Yes. And as an adult, if you get to that point, then you start asking, so what am I working towards now?
That's right.
We've all fallen for it, right? My classic example is my MacBook Pro, which I need because I do the podcast, right? And I watch stuff on it. The anticipation building up to it is huge. You're like, I'm really excited to go and get this. And you probably save some money, blah, blah, blah. You get there, you buy it, you get home. You think, you just have that sort of sigh of disappointment. It is good, but probably not as big as you thought it was going to be. And that's the same case for a lot of stuff that people fall for. I think US is quite unique. They do push the advertising and have this materialistic thing all the time, right? But it's the economy we're in there, right? They need us to buy stuff.
It's capitalism at its best, right? If you don't got it, you need it. If you don't need it, you'll need it tomorrow. And so, like I said, in Barbados, you just didn't need it. You didn't need it. Didn't want it. The TVs are old. What are you plugging it in? You can't even plug your video game into that thing. You want to go. So mostly we spent all of our time at the beach.
Yeah,
we lived on the beach. We spent at the beach. We were in the water. I noticed that when we were lounging, we were talking more, which of course impacts your ability to feel social, emotional well, right?
Yeah.
Because you're building, you were bonding, you were here. I feel like because we're overscheduled. The kids got to
Yeah.
get put away. You
Yeah.
know, the kids are in practices and all the things. You know, mom, dad, uncle, cousin, all the people got things that they're doing. You almost see that there is always a rat race, but never enough time to spend together. So Barbados represented a time when we were able to just sort of spend time together without feeling the issue of Uncle Ben, the time, right?
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I love the most about Barbados. So Senegal, time means nothing also. I mean, literally, people
Yeah.
are as slow as the time feels like it's moving over there. And so, maybe that's why they're living longer. I don't know.
Probably.
But trying to get anything done today is not happening over there. So you may as well just go and lay it down,
I love
And
that.
that's another place where you're not getting fresh fruit, right? That is a desert. You're
Yeah.
getting, root vegetables. They might be surrounded by an ocean. It's still desert. You're getting fish,
Yeah.
right? You're not ordering McDonald's. You're not. So I feel like I was healthier even physically overseas in some of these other environments. So when
True.
you say, why are they my favorite? I'm saying because everything that, represents wellness, these guys seem to have had it figured out. Even if when they sit in their country, maybe they're wishing that they had the luxuries found in this country, for example.
But I think they'd be disappointed. I mean, it's different if they're in danger or it really is like bad poverty. In those cases, of a war, of course, as well. That's a big one. But yeah, it's almost like be careful what you wish for because there's poverty in this in UK and also USA as well, which is huge, and that doesn't make sense if we're in a society that's supposed to benefit all, right? So something is wrong, and I wonder if your son's generation will analyze this growing up because he's going to realize, oh, I've got all the things, and it still doesn't seem enough. So that can't be right.
That's right. That's right.
So I wonder what happens in the future. Be quite interesting.
Yep, that's right.
No pressure on your son.
Well, you know what? We remind him constantly that material things don't bring happiness. Happiness comes from within. So, buddy, you get too stuck on material and, you'll become a statistic as we are seeing the statistics rise because people are more and more in search of this ability to feel happy and they are not looking within. And we know that that's where it starts, right? Material can add to it momentarily, but it won't give it to you. And it definitely won't prolong you, like it won't prolong itself. So,
yeah, I think people struggle now as well by seeing these people with huge wealth, which maybe wasn't much of a problem back in the day because the general public were okay. But now you're starting to see these numbers go up, mental health, poverty, etc. Yeah. But these guys at the top are getting wealthier. That's a disconnect. Something's wrong there. So I wonder if people are starting to think, oh, maybe it's not the be all and also morally right to get that rich. I don't know. But the system allows it, so the system has to change.
That's right. That's right.
That's another conversation. That's not travel. I've got some questions here from my notes. I've got, why would someone choose a plane flight versus a cruise versus a railway train to travel?
I think it depends on preference. I like land travel because if I need another flight to get out of said land travel, I can do that. So for me, it's a freedom and it's a flexibility. For folks who get on the boats, these guys, and on land, I like to explore.
Yeah.
I like to get into the natural environments. I want to spend more time than just a little bit there. I want to learn. When you're on boats, you literally on that boat as a water hotel, the majority of your time is on said water hotel. And when you get off to dock, that's like all of 10 hours max in a country. So that gives you enough time to do maybe one or two touristy things, and that's it. So you're not going to explore a country if you're taking a cruise.
True.
You're going to enjoy that cruise boat and then to get your butt home.
Yeah.
So I said, I won't do cruises unless I'm cruising to a place I've already been because I don't want the itch of not being able to get off the boat to bother me.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that that's just two different types of travelers. I meet people who are cruisers all the time, and they tell me they love the cruise environment, but these are not people who feel a deep, dying desire to get to know the local experience and the history and taste all the food. But that's not why they're traveling. So I think that it's about why you're traveling also.
That's an interesting one, that they love the cruise environment. So if they're not putting the country first, they just want to go on a cruise, which has a swimming pool, all you can eat, entertainment. Isn't it the same just staying at home and just doing those things out?
I think that's the same as when you get people who do staycations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
you're on
think
water
so.
and you can't escape. That's not for
Uh-huh.
me.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the thing, right? Like sometimes people talk to me about it and they say, Rakima, you've been to over 120 countries. Like, why haven't you cruised? I say, well, because I also struggle with claustrophobia. And so the
Yes.
idea of being trapped on a boat, it's giving Titanic for me. I struggle with the idea that even if I wanted to swim, I'm too far to swim anywhere. Like, this is a
Yeah.
problem for me. So when I think about planes, I used to have the same issue where I'd be like, man, if I'm flying and I can't get off this plane.
Mm,
And what ended up happening for me was I just started going with shorter trips first. And
yeah.
then I progressively got longer as I got more comfortable. I am taking my first cruise next year because I'm like, I have to challenge myself. My kid's never done the cruise thing. Like, we need to do it to just, stretch. And also because we're taking clients there. But I'll tell you that the bigger concern I've got is, things like, what happens if I'm not feeling great? Can I get off that boat? Can I go get help? When I go into
Great
countries,
question.
I know where the embassy is. I know where the hospitals are. I know multiple modes of transportation, so I got a whole dossier built out for countries.
My question is like also on the cruise, just to finish, I'm not a fan at all. I definitely wouldn't
Yeah.
do it. But if you get to one stop in the itinerary and you just decide there and then no more, can you get off?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
allowed?
you can get off.
Yeah.
Well, so when they dock, they port, everybody gets off if they want to get off.
But I
And
guess
if
the
you need to
visa
fly
situation
home,
would, yeah, okay. So the visa will be
oh,
sorted,
I
right?
see. Yeah, well, I mean, that is a question, right? Which is like, what happens? I have seen where people have gone on tours and then the boats have left them and they have had to fly out of there.
Because they can't
So,
stay.
because they can't stay, right? And
Mm.
also because they want to go home anyway after that, right?
Yeah.
Like Norwegian just left a bunch of people in one of these African islands,
Mm.
even. And so those folks still had to figure out how to get up out of there. So I suspect you're not staying. I think you are getting a flight and going home because you don't have the right visa to be there. But with the paperwork of the boat and stuff,
Mm.
they know that you were there. They know you got off that boat, though.
Yeah. And I guess internal cruises in the same country, fine. But if your itinerary is dotted to different countries and then halfway through, I just don't
Yeah.
understand how the visa thing works because you get off the boat, you're in that little area, but you must have a visa to step on I don't know, the duty free area or whatever and go into the
I
city.
don't I don't know about the visa thing necessarily.
Yeah.
What I do know is that every cruise though, there is paperwork that you're filling
Mm.
out before you
Yeah.
get on that cruise. The boats know everybody's movements. You're not booking a tour without it being a tour attached to the boat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think they've got special relationships set up.
Okay. Moving on to food. You've mentioned it quite a lot on this podcast so far. Which countries do have the best food if you can pick two or three?
I'm going to say Morocco, Colombia.
Oh, okay. Nice. Do you want to add a third one in just for luck?
The DR.
Okay. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, the
Uh,
DR. Yeah.
which countries rank top two or three for traveling with kids?
Ooh. Kid friendly. The Netherlands. Those guys love kids over there.
Hmm.
You could find any kind of activity. So if I'm going to say it's kid friendly, it's because I can find any and everything to do with the kid.
Sure.
And everybody's looking at me funny when he shows up, right? So I'm going to say, Netherlands. I'm going to throw Canada in there. We ain't never had a problem finding things to do
Hmm.
or having people be friendly or loving up on the kid. I'm going to say Senegal too.
Yeah, yeah.
Morocco was tough for me because they didn't have a lot to do there. And
Mm.
also, it felt very adult like the energy was like the adults wanted to only talk to the adults. So there was a
Okay.
order there, right? Around
Mm.
kids having a place, adults having a place. In Senegal, it felt like everybody just wanted to play with the kid. I couldn't get anybody to take them. They couldn't get them to take me seriously. Guys, come on, I got to get to the store right after Malik and I take this run. So they are a very family-based environment also.
Okay. And before we get to your businesses and stuff, I want to touch on solo travel. It's quite an important topic, and you've done a lot of it yourself. Maybe some tips and tricks if they're thinking about traveling for the first time, listeners, not traveled solo before, they've got some countries in mind. Is there any tips and tricks you might have?
I would say, for me, it was always important to go city center. I wasn't trying to go stay out in the sticks. I'm
Mm.
not going to do your Airbnb. And the reason being is that as a solo traveler, I needed access to concierges in the event that I had an emergency or something was happening.
Yeah.
I wanted access to reputable cars, forms of
Hmm.
transportation. And so the hotels oftentimes will give that to me. I also wanted to make sure that if I'm in the city center, it's easy for me to always find the location back to wherever I was.
Yeah.
So if I venture out, I know that all I got to do is get back city center because this thing is small anyway.
Mm.
So that's been something important for me. I think the other thing is, I loved connecting with travel groups where it was about a group and not private. These days, when I travel with my son and with my dad, everything is private. Some of it is because of, what the pandemic taught us about spreading of,
Yeah.
diseases. The other thing is that because we are now in a multi-generational experience, how my dad likes to travel, how I like to travel, we just like a different level of information and stuff like that.
Sure.
And we don't want to take away from other people who are part of the group because we've got 50 million questions and he's got to stop to go to the bathroom every 5 seconds. The kid needs a snack every 2 seconds, right? So getting into a place where you can do group tours is really good for meeting locals and meeting other people who are traveling just the same way that you are.
Mm.
I know when I went to Scotland for the first time, it was important to me that I was able to meet other people who were also, excited about. I was chasing movies, so Braveheart and where are these
Yeah.
things filmed and all the things. But it was nice to find other people who were nerding out and geeking out on the same types of stuff. And those people ended up being folks I ended up going to the pubs and stuff with, even while I was,
Got
traveling
it.
around the country. So it almost creates immediate travel buddies. So,
Okay. And a bit more serious topic, maybe safety. What's been
yeah.
experience of solo traveling as a woman? That's obviously the first thing, because that is kind of talked about quite a lot, but it is a big subject because it's hard for me to understand being a white, straight,
Yeah.
British, English-speaking male, which is probably one of the easiest people to travel, right? I don't get too many problems, but I can't
Yeah.
appreciate sometimes what other people go through.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely had to get into the habit of making sure that the embassy knew where I was.
Mm.
So I made sure to register always and forever. I dropped pins. So I
Oh,
dropped
okay.
my location to different trusted people, both in the country and outside of the country.
Yeah.
Most of that is because if I ever end up in a taxi that hijacks me or something like that, I need somebody to know where I was last at. And so
Yeah.
I do trackers. We also carry trackers. I don't know
Oh,
how much you all have talked about that, but Apple gives you an opportunity to get tags, and
okay.
you carry those tags with you. So, like when my son is traveling with me, he's always got a tag somewhere, either on his person or on his electronics or something.
Okay.
Even when he goes to school, he's tagged. Like,
Mm.
and some of this is because if something happens with the kid, I need to be able to find him, and
Mm.
I need it to be something that is unsuspecting, where folks are not going to go looking for it. So some of that, I mean, that stuff is very much about traveling. As a single woman, especially when you start going into environments where they do a lot of sex trafficking, a lot of there's some environments that actually uh, harm women because of cultural beliefs or whatever it is.
Mm.
So making sure that you also make contact, I think, with if you've got local connections there, if you've got organizations that might be partner organizations with the one you work for,
Yeah.
some of those types of ways I think I have always used to make sure that I'm at least someone knows where I am and knows that I'm in that country.
Got it. Okay. And why do you think people don't do it more often? Is it fear, do you think?
I think that many people don't know that they have codependent issues.
Oh, okay.
Truth is people are always looking for someone to do it with them.
Mm.
And the
Yeah.
question is why, right? And some of it is I'm scared, but a
Yeah.
lot of it is because I'd rather do it with other people.
Mm.
And I'd rather do it specifically with these people. I mean, the first time I traveled solo, it was so uncomfortable because I was like, I don't know people. So some people are not as outgoing,
Yeah.
right? I had to test myself the first time around to make sure that I was like going to be able to talk to strangers. You
Mm.
have to have a knack for talking to strangers. Right? So being comfortable with talking to people, you may not find introverts being excited to do that.
Sure.
And that could change how they experience countries if there are not people who are willing to talk to folks that just met today. Or if they are people that don't like asking for help. Well,
Yeah.
the truth is that when I went to Latvia, for example, I could not speak the language and also didn't know where I was. And they had reduced sunlight days. And, so I was lost often and snow everywhere. And I didn't know where I was at. I felt like I was in Narnia somewhere, So like for me, making sure you asked about another thing for solo travelers, make sure you have a translation tool of some sort with you.
Mm.
I can't tell you how many times my internet failed me and I both couldn't call for a taxi or Uber.
Yeah.
And I also couldn't translate to ask for help.
Mm.
So make sure you bring a language book with you because technology will not always work in environments where, technology is a luxury. For example, we went to India and all of my technology failed me. I literally couldn't even send a text message. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, what? I'm in the middle of Delhi and can't get anywhere, and that was stressful. I had to ask a stranger because my phone wouldn't work. I didn't have a book with me. I had a map and I had the address to the location I was staying in my pocket. So make sure you write that down also as a solo traveler.
Yeah.
What's your location? Because again, technology be failing. One time I had it where, a converter completely blew out my computer and my phone.
Oh, wow. Never had that
And
before.
so then it was like, lesson learned. I'm
Yes.
going to print off my itinerary and make a copy of my passport and stop pretending that technology will always save me, right?
Yeah.
So I think, making sure you've got copies of your travel documents, making sure that you are storing those things in several places in case, something gets taken, making sure that you have a backup plan for communication in the event your phone doesn't work. Because maybe you don't have internet for WhatsApp, or maybe, their towers are down. You can't believe how many countries have blackouts and stuff.
Blackouts. Yeah.
And so, those things become really important, I think.
Okay. And we're going to go to your businesses and future travels and social media and stuff. So, cruise planners. What is this service? What is the aim? What do you do?
Yeah. So Cruise Planners, it does exactly what it's saying. It books all things travel. So when it says cruise planners, a lot of people say, well, then does that mean you only do cruises?
Mm.
And it's like, no, actually, when the franchise first started, they were only doing cruises.
Right.
But they actually do land travel, cruises, tours, insurance, all of that.
Mm.
So the franchise that I own, we can do a little bit of all of that.
Yeah.
I also do a lot of itinerary creations, like you talked about earlier. I do a lot of dreaming with people. Some people like to get coached through the travel process. We create a lot of tips and tricks, and we also create a lot of tools for people. So, packing checklists and things of that nature. So it really is a business where we can do a lot more intimate creation of whatever the individual needs. And I would say some people say, why would anybody use a travel agent or a travel advisor? When I was coming up, I didn't even know they existed. So if you're a college kid who's looking for cheap travel, that works. You should be working with a travel agent. Why? Because not only can they find you the cheapest deals out there and they get access to bulk pricing across the board, but the other thing is that they can offer payment plans.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that, right? But if it's 45 days or more out, you're not looking at paying everything upfront 100%. You've got a bit of a process and time before you've got to pay that final thing. So that's what cruise planners do. That's what we do, is we support people in their travel experiences.
What are some of the most popular destinations that you book for?
Woo, these days, the Caribbean, I feel like everybody's trying to go to the Caribbean.
Oh, okay.
Lots and lots of Caribbean. Let's see. A lot of Caribbean, actually, Central America and a lot of Caribbean. And I don't know if it's because, those are places that are not as expensive, or if it's because people, their attention spans have reduced and this pandemic experience, right? Where people don't want to spend their time on a plane that long. A lot of people are saying time is not promised to us. So how do I want to spend that time? And there's a different way that people are looking at time right now.
That's interesting, because I changed my mind, actually. I was going to go to Asia, right, in November, which is a long haul flight over the Pacific. I'm like, no, I can't do it. It's not attention. It's more, it's going to be tiring, jet lag, and
Yeah.
also the cost is a bit more. So I think for
Yeah.
me, I was like, oh, I'll stick on the same time zone. Let's go Central America. It's a bit easier. And I think
Yeah.
by looking at Central American countries, I don't know about Caribbean, but it seems quite good value because we found last year Europe, Middle East, whoa, that's expensive.
I mean, they literally, uh, the prices are like doubled, tripled,
Mm,
right? Like
yeah.
right now, Asia costs more to get to than it ever has previously.
Yes. Yeah.
People ask me about it all the time, and I'm like, no, they put a premium on some of these places. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it has to do with the global supply chain, right? More fuel, more all of these things. Or if it's that, no, you want to get to these more exotic experiences, you're going to pay a
Okay.
premium.
Yeah.
But, a 5 hour flight or a 4 hour flight or a 3 hour flight down to Puerto Rico or to Mexico or to Barbados, as I suggested, lots of people going to St. Vincent of the Grenadines because,
Yeah.
Sandals just opened up that brand new resort. And, the Caribbean tends to have a lot of all inclusive experiences. Central America tends to have. So people are also looking at how far the money is stretching. In
Yes.
an environment where there are a lot of layoffs, we're starting to see a lot of people transitioning out of jobs. I think people are making different decisions around even how they spend money.
Yeah. 100%. That did play a part, I must admit.
Yeah.
Okay. And Be Well 365. This is
Yeah.
obviously your wellness business. So how do you help people? Where can people find you? And also, what is the aim?
Yeah. So Be Well, the whole impetus behind Be Well is we want people to be well. And so that means that we host wellness retreats where people come and learn about all of the different pillars of wellness. We found that over the years, we just discovered that people think to be well is about working out and what you eat. And a lot of people who are physically fit and who, eat well are
Hmm.
also still very depressed.
Yeah.
Folks were like, what WTF? Like, what is happening? Why am I still unable? And it's like, well, because wellness has at least 6 other pillars.
Hmm.
How are you socially? How's your environment? How's your spirituality? How's your connectedness to the environment? Like there are so many other parts. And so we take people on a journey where we try to teach them about those things and to sort of demystify the information and make it very plain for people to understand and
Hmm.
provide examples of how they can get started. And then we take them through personality profiling because what we also discovered is people don't know themselves. And I
Very
think
true.
what happens is by the time we turn adults, it's about the hustle bustle, it's about the build, it's about, who we think we ought to be. I think
Hmm.
a lot of us get lost in our relationships and friendships and all these things. And then we come back to center and we say, dang, do I even like that kind of stuff? Like, so the discovery about how we communicate with people, what makes us tick. A lot of people coming through the retreats are people who have struggled at work with interpersonal dynamics, people
Hmm.
who are recently divorced or parents have recently perished, right? So taking them through some things so that they can better get to know themselves, especially as they're thinking about how to rectify their wellness. And then we take them through a lot of fun and we do a lot of intensive one-to-one coaching. Because the other thing we realize is people are coming for many different reasons. So Be Well
Okay.
does the wellness retreats. We do wellness conferences that tries to basically bottle up what happens at the retreat in a more, I think, refined experience. And then we do coaching and mentoring for organizations and for individuals alike.
Hmm.
And that is work that I love. Part of the way that travel interweaves with it is that, like I said earlier, traveling for me is environmental wellness.
Hmm.
Uh, and so on a social tip, on an emotional tip, on a spirituality tip, on a money tip, a finance tip, an occupational tip, traveling oftentimes is hitting all of those parts. And
Sure.
so it felt like a very natural thing for me to also pair up with.
How important was COVID for your work with the wellness stuff? Did it change anything? Was it, wow, it's worse than we thought? Like, how did that impact that business?
COVID exploded the business,
Mm.
mostly because at the time I was working with a lot of organizations through the human resources, people operations envelope. And the staff were hit with the blues, literally, as COVID started snatching lives,
Mm.
as family structures started really breaking apart, because now you have people taking care of older relatives, younger people perishing, people being worried about dying themselves or the kids being infected, right? So it changed the chemistry in the mind, even because we were all under such duress around it,
Mm.
that it meant that a lot of people got stuck. A lot of people got stuck. They couldn't activate. They were stuck still. And so organizations came and said, we need your help. We need you to help us figure out how to get our staff back moving. What's going on with our staff? And I remember at the top of COVID, I said, we're looking at a pandemic that's threatening to take us all away.
Mm.
Nobody's going to be the same after this.
No.
And they have got to work on themselves to do the work so that they don't stay in a place of fear, stay in a place of stuckness. Because if they do, as long as this COVID pandemic is going to last, this is how long it's going to take for them to unravel this.
Yeah.
Because it's trauma. It's primary, secondary, tertiary trauma everywhere. And people have been in trauma response for a while. So, or inaction, trauma inaction, right? So it made it so that people wanted to work and wanted to talk about wellness. I will say that now that like the government's not talking about all the COVID numbers, and that we're not, some of us are not seeing it directly anymore because maybe it's got 5 touch points away or something like that. I am seeing that there is a fallback of using the language now, though. People are like, wellness is cute and that's fluffy and that's all good. Go back to work, right? And so you're seeing people be laid off. You're seeing employers saying you're going back into the office. You're seeing employers saying, I don't care what you're worried about. I'm paying you to do a job. Your family life is your problem, right? So you're seeing a change, I think, in fundamentally how employers are responding. And I think it's because they lost so much money. A lot of organizations had to close doors because they were trying to care. Right. A lot of places lost foundation money because foundations are like, what have you done in the last 4 years? So we saw it explode big time. And as a matter of fact, we are seeing it wind down, which is why I'm saying this, because now that we don't see the numbers, people are going back to some of the old ways of operating.
Yes, we see that a lot in the news. And what do you make of the quiet quitting, just to finish on this? Because that was a big thing. It came out sort of post-pandemic. I don't know where we are now, but isn't that a realization that people were just really assessing what they're doing day to day with their job?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was people said my life could have ended yesterday. I think that they no longer are thinking I'm definitely living until I'm 60 or 70. How can you just saw babies and teenagers die from COVID, Or every day we are plagued with seeing another mass shooting happening at the school levels or something.
Yeah.
Or, there is unrest in the countries, or there's so many things that right now are threatening people's ability to dream about a future.
Yeah.
That I think people are saying, all I got is right here, right now. So I'm going to make some decisions about how I feel today, because tomorrow is not promised. And I think we're all on borrowed time. Wow. And I think that that's a lot of the generation. That's how they're seeing it right now. So, if we want these guys to get back out there and we're seeing it even with travel. People are like, retirement for what? For who? We don't even know we're going to be here.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
Go.
Yeah. I've been saying that for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing a lot of tension around the infrastructure wanting to take it all back to business as usual, and people saying, I don't think so. It's impossible for it to be business as usual. So people are quitting. People are being let go. People are starting businesses like rapid fire because I think they're also deciding, I don't want you to treat me like a cog in a wheel anymore. I want more agency over how I use my time. I think that's another head nod too, because I don't know if tomorrow's promised. So I'm going to do my thing. And we're seeing people go back to school because I think some people are like, I don't want to really do anything. Not really. I don't want to be under stress in this way. I'd rather go learn about a thing. So trying to take themselves out of environments that feel traumatic, or that they're working in work that feels traumatic. And now they're trying to get into, what was it like before things felt so stressful? What was I doing before? I had that conversation the other day and I told someone the best job I ever had was at Starbucks. They said, what? I said, yeah, because I didn't get paid to think. I didn't have to really think. I am really good with relating to people.
Yeah.
So if you put me in front of folks and I'm supposed to, make sure that your first interaction of the day, because if you're going to Starbucks, oftentimes the first person you're reacting that you're, relating to is the person giving you your coffee.
Yeah.
I took a lot of pride in that. How are you? That felt great to me, that you're setting the tone for someone else's day.
Purpose. Yeah.
Right. And so it gave me a lot of purpose. It said, look, even if that person's having a bad morning, you have a chance to turn this thing around for these guys. that felt like it was a good use of time and of caring and spreading compassion and all the things. So I said to this person, now that I'm older, my son called me old. Listen, now that I'm older, I have a lot of things to worry about. You got to worry about your bills. You got to worry about your kid. You got to worry about extended relatives. You got to worry about your neighbors, even,
Mm.
right? But when you were younger, you didn't think a lot about that kind of stuff, and so life
Yeah,
felt easier.
it
So
did.
you hear
Yeah,
a lot of people, I think, in nostalgia and just kind of reminiscing around a time when they didn't have to worry as much.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think this crazy thought that we wait until we're retirement is beyond me. Because
yeah,
how can you guarantee it?
that's right.
Even in normal times before COVID, how can you guarantee it? But after COVID or anything that could be like that,
That's
war as
right.
well, like how can you guarantee you're gonna travel around at 60 when you're old and yeah, no, might not be here.
That's right. And that's what I told my dad. My dad's 75. I've been taking him traveling ever since he moved here. He moved here a year ago. And
Oh,
I
great.
literally tried to drag him everywhere we've been within the last year. And, I told him, I said, Dad, we don't know. I mean, his dad lived till he was 100 years old. My dad
Wow.
said he never thought he was going to live this long. So he outlived his own retirement.
Yeah.
And, the thing for us now is like, listen, as long as you're here, let's just go live it up. Let's go
Yeah,
do
yeah.
some,
Why
let's
not?
go, I mean, because otherwise, what do we have? So right now, what I'm placing value on is building memories. We've got
Yes.
3 generations: my son, myself, my dad. And so as many pictures, as many memories, as many that supersedes trying to save for the next 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And being tied down by, I guess, like materialistic stuff that you have to pay for over the long term. Big questions there. Yeah, huge. Um, yeah, another podcast. Where can people find you and access any of your services, social media and websites?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, if they're looking for travel, they can go to Be Well Travel. And so bewell365travel.com is where they can find cruise planners. And so they can do that. They can send me an email. It's just rikimah.glymph@cruiseplanners.com. If they are interested in wellness related stuff, they can go to bewell365.org. Of course, you hear the theme, be well, be well, be well, even if it's travel, even if it's retreating. But they can find me in both of those places,
Okay.
in addition to Instagram and Facebook also.
I'll put links in the show notes for you.
Awesome.
And before we get to the quick fire travel questions at the end, which is my closing feature for the podcast, what's your plans for this year, travel wise?
I love it. I love it. So my son has asked if he can get to Australia and South Korea for his birthday. And so we are toggling on getting him
Great.
there. It's July. So if we get to Australia, we've got one more continent before we join the 7 continent club. Woo!
Yes.
And then in December, I'm taking a whole group to Thailand, to Phuket,
Okay.
to do some wellness related activities. So those are the two that we know for so far.
Great too. Can't beat them. Okay. I'm going to finish my episode with some quick fire travel questions. These are the first things that come into your mind. Normally, your favorite things that you've experienced on your travels from the start to now. And no rules, just whatever comes to mind. It's travel question time. So, we've already mentioned the top 3 countries, I think, that you've been to. So, what about top 3 countries that you haven't been to that if tomorrow, no time constraint, no money constraint, new countries that you can go to, where are you going?
I'm going to Australia. I'm going to Fiji, and I'm getting to Antarctica.
Oh, love it. Okay. And if you could pick one country in the world to live there for a year, where are you going to live? That's not your own.
For a year. I'm going to I'm going to the Netherlands.
Oh, very progressive. Okay. This is between 1 and 3. There might not be 3, but is there any places that you didn't like that you traveled to?
Yes. There's a bunch of places I've traveled to I didn't like. I did not like Latvia.
Okay.
Didn't like Latvia.
Yeah.
I'll give you a very quick, which was it's the first time I was ever called the N word.
Oh,
And I could not get people to be friendly at all while I was there. And that was the longest 17 days of my life. I was actually there. A friend of mine played for their national basketball team, which is how I got there in the first place.
they love basketball. Yeah, yeah.
She
Okay.
was playing TTT Riga at the time. That was the first time I'd ever been into an environment where I was like clearly unwelcome. Maybe I don't come back here again.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
awful. Okay. What about top three countries for food and cuisine. We
Oh
might have
my
already
God.
said it, but let's go again.
I know. Okay. Dominican Republic,
Yeah.
Senegal, Morocco.
What about a dish in each one of those then? Let's change it up.
Okay. All right. All right. Senegal, I know because I spent too much time in Senegal. So I
Yeah.
love cheboujen, which is their national fish dish. And I love poulet yassa, which is also a national dish.
Okay.
So Senegal, you can get food from me any day. Morocco, it wasn't a certain dish more so than it was about how fresh the produce was there. So
Mm.
they make a lot of food based on fresh vegetables, cucumbers, tomatoes, just we just fell in love with it every day. And we don't even like vegetables like that. I'm telling on myself, I don't even like vegetables like that. But I ate them every day while I was in Morocco.
Okay. Interesting. What about top three countries that were the nicest people?
Oh, I still think Senegal had some of the nicest humans.
Hmm.
Senegal was super sweet. They don't care what color you are. You could be green or purple. They're literally just some of the sweetest hearted people. I think Mexico has really sweet people there too. I've
Hmm.
never met someone in Mexico that was unkind to me at all.
Okay.
And I will say Dominican Republic.
Oh,
Those guys never had a problem. Everybody was smiles, everybody, and they got little to nothing. These countries, none of them do.
mm.
And yet, folks were it felt very genuine. So,
Okay. What about top three cities that you've been to?
so Christchurch in Barbados, love that place. It's all the way in the south of Barbados. So it's localized,
Hmm.
but I love being down there. Puerto Vallarta, love Puerto Vallarta in
Oh,
Mexico.
Mexico. Yeah.
Love Puerto Vallarta. And Amsterdam, of course. Wait, we almost moved to Amsterdam.
Oh, I've never been.
We almost moved there. My son was in love with Amsterdam. His favorite color used to be orange, and he's like,
Yeah.
"That's the country's color, and we can take boats in the canal." I think it wasn't until we got there and experienced hay fever that
Yeah.
they have hay fever stuff going on here.
Yeah. Okay. What about a country that's got the best coffee if you drink it?
Ethiopia. Ethiopia has the best coffee.
Yeah, makes sense.
See that? I got deep voice.
Yeah, you went quite serious there for about 10 seconds. If you could pick somewhere to sit for an afternoon and watch the world go by with a cup of coffee, where are you going to sit?
You're here in Maryland. I'm taking you up the street to the gas station called Wawa. Now, we've got Starbucks and all the other things, but their coffee is way better than anybody else's.
That's an interesting answer.
I might get judged for that, but
Yeah. Yeah. Are you a sunrise or sunset person?
I am a sunset.
Reason?
It just looks better. But that's good. Let me be honest. It's because I'm up early morning every day. It doesn't matter what country I'm in, right? So
Okay.
so it might tell someone she's a sunriser person, but actually, because I get up so early, I'm constantly chasing sunsets because it indicates to me it's time for me to go night-night. So
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah. I'm the opposite. Never
I'm like,
early
there's
then.
nothing cute attached to it.
Okay. The last question for the podcast is what couple of sentences can you give to someone who's a bit nervous about going to travel? That could be locally, internationally, to give them a bit of a boost or a bit of advice to maybe get out there and see the world.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, hey, if you're feeling nervous, do it anyway. Don't let fear stand between you and the thing you want to be doing. Because oftentimes fear is just our own internal limiting beliefs. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that what we are fearful of or what we think is true. And in fact, I've found that things that I've been afraid of, actually, I had no business being afraid of it, but it was because it was unknown to me. So I am someone, if I feel afraid, you'll always see me jump 2 feet in because I don't like the fact that fear can do that to me. Because I think some people can be debilitating. So
Yeah.
I would say go for it. Maybe proceed with caution though, right? Like sometimes I go and I got training wheels on though. I don't fully go all the way in. But for example, like I really, really, really want to get to Antarctica. I am a person who's anemic. I'm petrified for all the real reasons, right? And I'm like, I got to see it though, because I'm also a person who believes in climate change. I need to go.
Yeah.
So what boots I need, what socks I got to get, what jacket I've got to get. So just be prepared, right? Like whatever that fear is, prepare yourself to whatever extent you can so that you can at least, lay that concern and say, look, I'm going in as prepared as I can be. but I'm not going to let that stop me from doing the thing.
Awesome. And Rikimah, it's been a great chat. Your infectious laugh has made me laugh throughout the conversation. And also your passion for travel is quite clear and your story is amazing. So thanks for sharing with the podcast and listeners today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, yeah, just a quick one. I just want to say there are many ways to support this podcast. You can buy me a coffee and help support the podcast with $5. Or you can go to my merch store with the affiliate link with TeePublic, where there's plenty of merch available to buy, such as t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, and also some children's clothing. Thirdly, which is free, you can also rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or Good Pods. Also, you can find me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Simply just search for Winging It Travel Podcast, and you'll find me displaying all my social media content for traveling, podcast, and other stuff. Thank you.